I'm Ann Simmons in the newsroom of the Los Angeles Times. On Sunday, residents of Crimea voted overwhelmingly to secede from Ukraine so that they can seek annexation to Russia. Ukraine's acting government and the West deemed the referendum illegal, and the US says there will be consequences. Joining me to shed light on the possible implications of this vote is the Times' global affairs reporter, Carol J. Williams. Hello, Carol.
Hi, Ann.
So, Carol, first of all, bring us up to speed. How did we get to this referendum? Why?
Well, there's suspicion that this has been a plan of Vladimir Putin's for a very long time, and the opportunity arose when the Ukrainian president was forced out a month ago, and this threw the entire Ukrainian leadership into chaos, and the Kremlin was able to allege that Kiev no longer controlled the rest of the country, that ethnic Russians in the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine were endangered, that they've cast the new leadership or the interim leadership as fascists who are out to deprive anybody but Ukrainians of their rights, and that the ethnic minority was in danger. So that was the pretext for the referendum.
And what will it mean if Russia's maneuverings to gain territory isn't recognized by the West?
Well, very little, because they have firm control of Crimea, and there are many examples of aggressions and territorial seizures that have persisted for years or decades, despite the lack of outside recognition. And look at Turkey and its seizure of 40% of Cyprus 40 years ago. Turkey's the only country that recognizes northern Cyprus as an independent state, but it doesn't matter because they have control of it. They've got exclusive, benefit from whatever economic activity goes on there. Russia has been occupying and controlling areas of Georgia since 2008 when they seized Abkhazia and South Ossetia. And they also have forces in the Transdniester area of Moldova. So the international community can't insist on Russia giving back these seized territories unless they're willing to do so militarily, and they're not.
Right. Well, I understand, though, that the US isn't just sitting back, that sanctions have been imposed. Tell us a bit about what kind of retaliation Russia can expect.
The sanctions so far are pinprick at best. The U.S. sanctions only affect 7 people in the Russian and Ukrainian, the deposed leadership of Ukraine. The European Union sanctions have identified 21 people, but we're talking about a few handfuls of people. The vast majority of Russians are celebrating this seizure of Crimea. They see it as a historical imperative that they get this territory back after 60 years of Ukrainian control. Until the economic consequences start hitting people in their pocketbooks, I don't think you're going to see any pushback from the Russian population, and there's nothing the international community can do about it.
So just to wrap up, Carol, you were recently in Ukraine. Just tell us a bit about what the atmosphere is like there. What's the situation like on the ground?
Well, in Kiev, there's a lot of anger because the protesters who fought to oust Yanukovych for 3 months were jubilant when he fled to Russia at the end of February. But immediately, within a few days, the Russian troops had invaded Crimea, taken control of the government, scheduled this referendum, and they did all this in less than 2 weeks. So I mean, it's not recognized as legitimate anywhere except in Russia, but there's not really any way to roll it back. And I think the people in Western Ukraine recognize that. So the main atmosphere right now is anger and disbelief.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your insight, Carol. For more on this story, please visit latimes.com and follow us on Twitter @LATimes.